This is Iowa's news leader. This is KCCI 8 News Close Up.
This morning on KCCI 8 News Close Up, an assassination attempt on former president and presumptive Republican nominee Donald Trump. We have some tough images to share this morning. Donald Trump says a bullet grazed his ear. He is safe, but he was injured in the attack. Investigators say the shooter, who was on a nearby roof, opened fire into the crowd. One spectator died. 2 others are critically injured. We want to show you the moment that shots rang out at the rally.
Take a look at what happened.
You can see Secret Service there rush to the former president after he dropped to the ground before they then escorted him off stage. The former president was then taken to a local hospital. Overnight, law enforcement surrounded the home of the shooter. The FBI identified the gunman as 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks. Investigators say Crooks lived in Bethel Park in Pennsylvania. That was an hour away from the rally. Secret Service shot and killed the gunman on the roof where he opened fire. The FBI says they have not yet identified a motive. According to Pennsylvania state records, Crooks was a registered Republican. Federal campaign finance records show he did donate $15 to a progressive political action group in 2021. That would have been when he was about 17. This morning, the former president called for unity on his Truth Social account. He thanks supporters for their thoughts and prayers and says, quote, "In this moment, it is more important than ever that we stand united and show our true character as Americans, remaining strong and determined and not allowing evil to win. I truly love our country and love you all, and look forward to speaking to our great nation this week from Wisconsin." Now, the question top of mind for many this morning: how did this gunman get close enough to shoot and injure the former president? And how will the attempted assassination impact the Republican National Convention? That starts tomorrow in Milwaukee. We start with John Cardinale with a closer look at the video and how this unfolded in less than a minute.
Hello, Butler, and hello to Pennsylvania.
Former President Donald Trump was speaking at a podium about border crossing numbers with his supporters behind him. That's when 5 shots over the course of 2 seconds rang out. You can see right at the second bang, Trump grabs the right side of his head and then gets down to the ground after the 5th shot. Watch as Secret Service then jump on top of him. You can hear people yelling to take cover. 2 seconds later, those bangs begin again, 5 or 6 in a row. 10 seconds go by and there's another pop, and people in the crowd scream. 31 seconds later, you can hear personnel, apparently Secret Service or security, say this.
Good. Shooter's down. Are we good to move? We're clear. Let's move.
After a few more seconds, the podium microphone picks up Trump saying this.
Let me get my shoes.
I got you, sir. I got you, sir.
Let me get my shoes, sir.
Hold that in your head. It's bloody.
So we gotta move to the bus.
After all of that, Secret Service rushes Trump off the stage. That's when we saw him give the fist pump to the crowd with blood on his face, and we hear the USA chants from his supporters. The Secret Service confirms the shooter is dead, shot by their personnel. They said the shooter was not in the venue. They were outside firing from an elevated position. The investigation is being turned over to the FBI. In Washington, I'm National Investigative Correspondent John Cardinale.
And we heard there from one eyewitness. This happened at a rally with thousands in attendance. And so many of those that were in that crowd are now sharing their terrifying accounts of what happened. One witness shared how he stepped into action when he saw a person injured in the crowd.
All we know was shots were fired, and then I jumped over the barrier and put my hand on the guy's head that was profusely bleeding.
Who was it? Do you know?
This
is not Trump, though. This is another person.
Yeah. So Trump's not here.
And it was, you said he got hit on his head?
Yeah.
Did you see, were you in the vicinity of where Trump was?
I was on the side. I was a special guest.
Are you okay?
I'm Rico Elmore, but I just, military reactions.
You heard their military reaction. We're hearing from a lot of people in the crowd that were paramedics or had medical experience that really stepped into action. Many in the crowd also described just the chaos that unfolded in just a matter of moments. They say it actually wasn't immediately clear that those loud popping sounds were gunfire. They say at first it maybe sounded like fireworks, and they say shock set in the moments that they realized what was happening.
Something you don't expect. You know, it's a bolt out of the blue, so it's very shocking. It's just, I think a lot of people in the crowd just thought it was fireworks going off. I knew immediately it was gunshots. I knew they were close, and then when I saw someone get hit and go down, that's when I knew it was probably serious. It was a lot of confusion. It's just massive confusion, throughout the event. I saw Donald Trump get hit. It looked like he was either, I was running my camera at the time, but it looked like he was just turning his head to the side, and it looked like he got grazed in the right ear with a bullet. I kind of saw that go on, and then I looked down, I saw the man, died in the bleachers. It was just complete pandemonium. Like there was a bit of a delay, like there was a lot of confusion, but immediately, it seemed like more gunfire erupted. I couldn't figure out where that was coming from, and then, there was a state policeman there. I believe a SWAT team, showed up relatively quickly. They jumped the side. There was a fence, it was next to the bleachers. They jumped the bleachers and started clearing the bleachers. And then I helped carry the body of the man down out of the bleachers, and they took him to a tent behind the bleachers.
Just and such an emotional response there. You hear him carrying the body after one person was killed. Well, in the hours after the shooting, President Joe Biden condemned the violence, calling it, quote, sick, in a televised address.
There's no place in America for this kind of violence. It's sick. It's sick. It's one of the reasons why we have to unite this country. We cannot allow for this to be happening. We cannot be like this. We cannot condone this. But the bottom line is that the Trump rally was a rally that he should have been able to be conducted peacefully without any problem. But the idea that there's political violence or violence in America like this is just unheard of. It's just not appropriate. And everybody must condemn it. Everybody.
Former President Trump and President Joe Biden spoke on the phone after the shooting. Sources described the call to CNN as, quote, short and respectful. Well, still to come on Close Up, we are taking a look at the political reaction of this moment. After the break, we ask what this means for the Republican National Convention and for our country moving forward. We'll be right back. We continue our coverage of the assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. Again, the former president says a bullet grazed his ear, but he did survive the attack. The gunman is dead. One attendee was killed. 2 others were critically injured. This morning, the Secret Service is pushing back on claims that Trump was denied requests for additional security. They're saying it's, quote, absolutely false, saying, quote, we added protective resources and technology and capabilities as part of the increased campaign travel tempo. Still, there are questions about how the gunman was able to get a line of sight on the former president. Some witnesses say they told law enforcement that someone was on a roof moments before the attack.
I was up at the fence line, saw the guy move from roof to roof, told an officer that he was on the roof. The officer come looking, I went back to where I was standing, heard that there was somebody that could see the person, so I went back to where they were standing, saw the person, went back and told the officer again that if he goes back to that particular spot, he can see the person, figuring that he would go on radio. And when I turned around to go back to where I was is when the gunshots started, and then it was just chaos, and we all came running away, and that was that.
And in the last hour, we learned investigators found bomb-making materials inside the shooting suspect's vehicle and home. The FBI still has not shared a motive for the attack. But now U.S. leaders and political candidates are sharing their shock and horror at the assassination attempt. CBS's Bradley Blackburn shows us the heinous and historic moment and the waves it's making in Washington.
Take a look at what happened.
It was a shot heard round the world. That moment in Pennsylvania when former President Trump reacted to gunfire, now resonating around the globe. The image of his bloodied face and his fist raised moments after the shooting is front page news, and for many, a reason to pause for prayer.
To lead us and guide us.
From outside Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach to this gathering in Phoenix near the state capitol.
This is a time when we need to learn how to put those differences aside and figure out how we can stop this stuff.
Before returning to the White House, President Biden condemned the attack.
Everybody must condemn it. Everybody.
The Biden campaign said it is pulling political ads off TV and pausing communications. In a statement, former President Obama said we should all be relieved that former President Trump wasn't seriously hurt. Former President Bush said he's grateful that President Trump is safe. And former President Clinton said violence has no place in America, especially in our political process. And everyday Americans are wrestling with what this moment means.
I think that reflects a lot about the situation right now, the tension, and I think that's something that we all got to be careful about.
At Trump Tower in New York, security was heightened and authorities are re-examining precautions at this week's Republican convention in Milwaukee.
Now, world leaders are also weighing in, including two leaders who have been critical of President Trump. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called it a heinous crime, saying it shows how serious the global challenges to democracy are right now. Chinese President Xi Jinping also sent his sympathies to former President Trump overnight. Both leaders say they are watching the investigation closely. After the attack, Iowa lawmakers took to social media calling for prayers for the president and for those in the crowd. Shortly after the shooting, I spoke with 1st District Representative and Republican Marionette Miller Meeks about what this means for her party and for the country.
What was your immediate response when you heard that there were shots fired at Donald Trump's rally in Pennsylvania?
First, I just thought it was unreal. I'm old enough, although I was extremely young when President Kennedy was assassinated, and Martin Luther King, and Robert Kennedy, and then President Reagan, who was the first president I had voted for. And I just thought it was unreal, and I thought it was a sad day for America. This is no way to settle political differences if that's the reason for this. All political violence should be condemned. We should all try to tone things down. Pray certainly for those that were injured. My heart and my prayers go out to those individuals and their families, and then to President Trump.
Talk to me a little bit about just the horrific and the historic nature of this.
We're not going to be, intimidated by this. I think that it's important that we continue to have a message, but to tone it down. We are all Americans. As Americans, we are not enemies. We may disagree on political solutions to problems, but we are all Americans. We should be here, and we are, for the betterment of our common man, and those who wish to come here to work, to be part of this great nation. It's just a very sad day that this would occur. So we pray for those injured. We pray for President Trump. I'd like us all to come together to settle this at the ballot box. If this is, which we assume, political violence, it should be settled at the ballot box. It should be settled by our votes and at our elections. It should not be settled with violence. Regardless of your political preference or choices or party affiliation, this is unconscionable, it is untenable, and it is not acceptable. We go through an election, we go through a voting process, we choose the person that is the best for us. Again, let's come together as Americans. Let's say enough political violence, settle this at the ballot box, let's tone down the rhetoric, and remember that all of us need to be safe. It's one of the primary functions of the Constitution and the federal government, and that is to protect our lives and keep us safe.
Does this impact your thoughts on how you hold campaign events?
Well, I think it's interesting because once we realized the president was safe, the next thought was, next week we have the Republican National Convention and the security. We have already been briefed on the security at the convention and what would be going on. And so we know that security is going to be much tighter at that event. But as far as doing events, I will continue to do events. I will continue to be out there. I'm not going to be intimidated by this.
I want to talk to you about the Republican National Convention being so soon after this tragic incident. Do you see this impacting the convention at all?
I think people are going to be even more committed than ever. I think we have a resolve, and we've seen that in Iowa. I think people will be there, they will be enthusiastic, and they will be motivated. And again, I just want to say, everybody, keep in your prayers and in your heart these family members, these individuals, and President Trump, that they have the grace of God as they deal with this. This is a horrific situation, very sad. And for all of us, let's keep them in our hearts and our prayers.
Other Iowa leaders are also weighing in on the tragedy. In a statement, Republican Attorney General Brenna Bird, who endorsed Trump ahead of the Iowa caucuses, wrote, quote, "Today's heinous assassination attempt was not just an attack on President Trump, it was an attack on our country and our democracy." The state's only elected Democrat, State Auditor Rob Sand, also issued a statement. In it, he says, quote, "Please join our family and all Iowans in praying for former President Donald Trump and anyone else impacted by this senseless act of violence. Political violence of any kind is unacceptable and has no place in democracy." I also spoke with KCCI political analyst Dennis Goldford about the implications of this on the November election, on both political parties and on the country, as Americans continue to learn more details.
What is your response and perspective on the implications of this horrific event?
In terms of implications and what this says about our current political situation, our problem is that we live in an increasingly polarized time, when someone on the other side, whatever the other side might be, is not merely an opponent, but an enemy. And that's a dangerous perspective, and it's flamed significantly by social media. By 3 hours after the shooting, I already began to see all sorts of conspiratorial claims, whether measured insane or extreme and fanatical. People have access to these platforms that allow them to broadcast views that before the internet just remained between them and their families and friends. But now all sorts of rumors can be spread. And as we try to figure out implications, we've got to be very careful to understand what we know to be factual and what is somebody's attempt simply to steer what seems to be a fact in a particular political direction. Claims like this simply inflame everything. Our politics has become so tribal and vicious. I think, to adopt a phrase that young people for quite a long time have used, we need to chill out. We need to find a way to regain and reinforce a basic civility beyond our differences. Until that happens, we're going to be vulnerable to some random actor out there deciding to carry out a mission against some particular political or even other kinds of social figure. And it's dangerous and we're vulnerable to that.
Do you see this creating any sort of political impact?
I think it will increase the intensity of those hardcore Trump supporters, the folks you saw in the video at the particular event he was supposed to speak at, the rally. They were already strong Trump supporters, and when this occurred, you saw all sorts of fist raised and angry expressions, and probably some very angry language and gestures as well. So I think politically this will redouble or quadruple the support of those most intense Trump supporters for him and his candidacy.
This occurred, right before the Republican National Convention is scheduled to start on Monday. You're going to have Republicans from all across the country coming together all in one place. Do you anticipate that there will be any impact on the convention?
Well, there may be more security. I wouldn't be surprised if that were the case. I think that there was always going to be big security, tight security in Milwaukee, and this will tighten it even further. If you recall the president's being walked off, carefully escorted off the stage, you saw him raise and pump that fist. I think you're going to see that in a lot of videos about how tough and strong a leader he is. So they will use that, I believe, for political purposes. So this is, again, another big log in the fire. And remember what he constantly says. He says, they're not coming for me, they're coming for you, his supporters, and I'm just standing in their way. So I think that's been a very effective line to use with people who feel themselves put upon by or threatened by actions of government. And I would expect that to redouble, if not quadruple.
Could this become a rallying cry at the convention?
I think that for the strong, impassioned Trump supporter, this is an attack on my guy, and we're not going to take it. And we're going to get out there and redouble our efforts to make sure he's elected. I think it'll have that kind of impact as a rallying event.
Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds has also weighed in on the assassination attempt. You can find her reaction and perspectives from other state leaders on KCCI.com. We'll be right back. This morning, we are learning more about the security and the layout of the rally where former President Donald Trump survived an assassination attempt. This map shows where the stage was on the Butler Farms showground. That is where the rally was held. And you can see the roof where the suspected gunman was killed. It is a large open area, but the shooter was outside the perimeter that the Secret Service set up. Right now, security is tight in Milwaukee ahead of the Republican National Convention. Chopper video here shows the major Secret Service perimeter now surrounding Pfizer Forum. WISM, our sister station in Milwaukee, spoke to Brian Schimming this morning. He's a member of the RNC Committee on Arrangement, which is in charge of the convention.
Talk about what we can see in terms of the security. You're on the Committee of Arrangements working to secure this massive event here in Milwaukee. Does anything change as a result of what we saw yesterday?
I think that remains to be seen. We felt confident about where we were, all the cooperation between the Secret Service, city, the county, dozens of law enforcement agencies. So we feel pretty confident on where we are there. But I'm sure there's some folks getting another look today just to make sure. But we feel pretty confident we're going to have a great convention.
Brian, let's talk about the convention itself and what we're going to see behind us. Do we anticipate changes to the program, to the tone? What are those conversations like at this hour?
Yeah, I haven't seen anything about changes to the program so far. I know the president will be on site, and so we're looking forward to welcoming here to Milwaukee into the Republican National Convention. Look, I don't see a situation where there are massive changes. We haven't heard anything yet. We haven't been told anything that's going to change, but it wouldn't surprise me. But really, this convention here in Milwaukee, great opportunity for Milwaukee, terrific for the Republican Party, but we'll also always have, the thoughts and those victims on our minds.
A historic moment that's certainly to have a historic impact. Well, when we come back, we have a final look at what we know so far about the assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. We'll be right back. We want to leave you with what we know right now about the assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. The bullet grazed Trump's ear during a campaign rally in Butler County, Pennsylvania. One spectator died, 2 others are in critical condition. The shooter has been identified as 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks. Secret Service shot and killed him at the scene and are still investigating a motive. We'll be following every development on the investigation and the political fallout. Thanks for joining us for KCCI 8 News Close Up. Have a great day.